In Lesson 4, we identified 12 key prophetic events that must take place before the tribulation begins. In our most recent lesson, Lesson 13, we explored the 4 phases of AI development. Now in this lesson, we'll bring the 2 concepts together to demonstrate how God may be using artificial intelligence to fulfill His plan for the end times. As we explore these timelines and prophetic events, I want to emphasize that while absolute prophetic certainty isn't possible, what I'm presenting to you is the result of extensive study and a careful analysis of both Scripture and the current trajectory of technological and global developments. Given that 5 of the major prophetic events have already taken place, such as World Wars I and II, famines and earthquakes, the reestablishment of Israel, and the reclaiming of Jerusalem, it is highly plausible that we are now progressing toward the fulfillment of those remaining events. Furthermore, with the rapid development of artificial intelligence, specifically the move toward AGI and eventually ASI, the potential for global disruption, economic upheaval, and the emergence of centralized global governance aligns with both biblical prophecy and what we are seeing in the world today. Based on the trajectories of technology and the fulfillment of past prophecy, this scenario represents a highly reasonable projection of how the future could unfold, particularly if we assume that God will intervene before AI reaches the point of achieving the singularity. While this timeline is rooted in careful interpretation and modern understanding, it is important to remember that God is sovereign over all history, and His timing may not align perfectly with human expectations. Nonetheless, this projection is grounded in both biblical truth and the current state of the world, making it a strong and plausible framework for understanding how these events could unfold. I know there may be some questions about specific parts of the events or timeline, but since I've already covered those details extensively in previous videos, in the interest of time, I'd rather not go over them again here. Instead, I encourage you to revisit the earlier videos in this playlist where I explain everything in depth. They should provide the answers you're looking for, and I believe they'll offer helpful context for this video. So let's get started. Current to 2030. AI technologies are rapidly advancing, especially in sectors like manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, and service industries. This leads to massive job displacement, economic instability, and the beginnings of a global recession as millions lose jobs to automation. Social unrest and political instability begin to rise globally as governments struggle to address the growing unemployment crisis. 2030 to 2033. Artificial General Intelligence, AGI, is achieved around 2030, marking a major leap in AI's capabilities. AGI begins outperforming humans in nearly all intellectual tasks, further disrupting global employment. AGI leads to technological innovation, but also exacerbates economic inequality and instability. The global economy faces recessions, and unemployment continues to rise, leading to a worsening economic crisis. During this period, national governments attempt to mitigate the damage caused by AGI-driven disruptions. They implement policies to regulate AI, stimulate job creation, and stabilize the economies. However, these efforts largely fail due to the overwhelming scale of the problem. Economic conditions worsen, leading to debt crisis, social upheaval, and the loss of global influence for nations like the United States. By 2033, the global economic situation has reached a critical point. Massive unemployment, political instability, and the social unrest spread across multiple nations. The United States, weighed down by debt and economic turmoil, faces a major decline in its global influence. Other nations also experience significant economic changes. The world is on the brink of chaos, with nations struggling to address the AI-driven disruptions. 2033 to 2036. As national leaders fail to stabilize their economies, the collective cry for a one-world government begins to grow. Global populations and political elites recognize that the scale of the crisis requires a unified, centralized authority. In response to the global economic crisis and chaos, the one world government is formed and takes swift action to address the global unemployment and recession. It begins to create new industries tied to AI, robotics, and technological innovation, leading to the creation of new jobs. By mid-2034, the world sees an economic turnaround as new jobs are created and begin to mark the start of a recovery. This creates a period with a sense of peace and abundance, giving the world the illusion that the crisis has been solved and the future hoped-for utopia may become a reality. As the one world government stabilizes the economy, it begins to build the infrastructure for artificial superintelligence, that is, ASI. ASI will surpass AGI in intelligence and capabilities, leading to even more profound global impacts in the near future. 2036 to 2038. Around 2036, the 10 rulers begin to assume power over key global sectors on behalf of the one world government. Unlike geographical divisions, where drawing boundaries and aligning regional leadership takes time, the appointment of thematic rulers could happen rapidly, within a matter of months, because the existing sovereign nations would remain intact. However, the nations and their leaders would submit to the governance of these 10 rulers as a way of conforming to the one world government's authority. By 2037, each of the 10 rulers would have assumed full control over his or her respective global sector, operating with immense power and influence. Together, they manage the global economy, technological advancements, military, security, and resource allocation of the world. By 2038, ASI will have been achieved and will be fully integrated into global governance, influencing and optimizing the systems controlled by the 10 rulers. This would mark a peak in the false sense of peace, as the world increasingly depends on ASI and the 10 rulers for stability and progress. 2038 to 2042. The one world government continues to stabilize global economies and political systems, leading to a period of false peace and prosperity. This period is largely influenced by ASI as it begins to take control of global systems, ensuring peace and order. In early 2041, Israel, after completing the burning of the weapons a couple years earlier from the attempted Russian Allied invasion, and having reestablished its internal government, now begins turning its attention back to the Temple Mount. By mid to late 2041, Israel begins preparing for the Third Temple by staging construction materials on the Temple Mount. This action, or some other action, provokes a global crisis, particularly among Israel's neighbors, and breaks the peace in the region. On behalf of the one world government, the Antichrist steps in as a mediator, negotiating a peace covenant to resolve the tension caused by Israel's actions. This period of negotiation lasts several months, leading to the signing of the covenant. 2042 to 2045. The peace covenant is signed in early to mid-2042, officially marking the start of the 7-year tribulation. This covenant guarantees peace for Israel and allows them to proceed with the Third Temple's construction. The singularity never occurs. 2 questions remain. When does Russia invade Israel, and why does God not allow the singularity to be achieved? Regarding the Russian invasion, there are 3 critical prophetic facts that help us time the invasion. Israel's confidence in defending itself. At the time of the invasion, Israel is described as feeling secure and capable of defending itself. This confidence could stem from military advancements or alliances that give Israel the sense that it is protected, particularly from its immediate surrounding hostile nations. This means that the one world government has not yet been established, and Israel's sense of security is likely a result of its own military capabilities, such as the Iron Dome defense system and advanced weaponry, and a sense that they are not under immediate threat from global powers like Russia or hostile neighbors. Lack of international support for Israel. The fact that nations like the United States, Spain, and others do not come to Israel's defense suggests a possible rise in global anti-Semitism or a shift in international politics. Nations that would have traditionally supported Israel, especially the United States, may refrain from doing so either because of internal political shifts or a broader global sentiment against Israel. This could reflect a period where nationalism or economic interests dominate global politics, and nations prioritize their own issues over international alliances. Russia's reluctance and divine intervention. Russia's invasion is not motivated by strategic desire, but by God putting hooks in the jaw of Gog, that is, Russia's leader. This implies a divinely orchestrated event where God draws Russia into conflict against Israel, even though Russia itself may not have planned it. This invasion likely comes at a time when Russia's attention is elsewhere, possibly focused on global economic and political matters because of the AI disruption, and the decision to invade Israel appears out of character or even unplanned. If we assume the one world government forms around 2033 to 2036, the Russian invasion could take place in the early 2030s, possibly between 2032 and 2034. This also aligns with the 7 years Israel needs to burn the weapons left behind from the war, which would be completed between 2039 and 2041. So, why does God not allow the singularity to be achieved? From a biblical perspective, it's important to remember that God is sovereign and omniscient, fully in control of world events, including the course of human technological advancement. If we believe that the singularity represents a point where AI could become so powerful as to upend society and threaten the very existence of mankind, it's plausible to assume that God, in His sovereignty, would not allow this to occur before He initiates the tribulation. In prophetic terms, the tribulation serves as a period of divine judgment for mankind, and it may be that God prevents humanity from unleashing what could lead to its own extinction, especially since the tribulation serves, among other things, to reestablish God's authority and power over all things, and to usher in Christ's reign of the Messianic kingdom. Metaphorically, singularity could represent the ultimate Tower of Babel moment, a time when human pride in its technological creations reaches its apex. God didn't allow the first Tower of Babel to be finished, and it's likely He won't allow this one either. In light of this, it is reasonable to think that God would intervene and start the tribulation before humanity transcends natural boundaries with technology. So why would the tribulation start around 2042? When ASI emerges, roughly around 2038, we would likely see rapid acceleration in global technological and political systems. ASI would begin reshaping economies, controlling military systems, and influencing global governance. Once ASI emerges, its ability to build, optimize, and coordinate global systems would be exponentially faster than anything humanity could achieve. Tasks like infrastructure development, global governance coordination, and societal adaptation could happen within a few years rather than decades. ASI could design and deploy highly advanced systems of communication, governance, and even economic regulation in a relatively short time. The entire process of going from ASI to the singularity has been estimated to take about 7 years. By the midpoint of this 7-year period, it's possible that ASI will have grown too powerful for humanity to regulate. The illusion of control will be lost, and ASI begins exerting undeniable authority over global systems. At this point, the very existence of humanity becomes threatened, requiring God, in His sovereign wisdom and His amazing grace, to intervene and put an end to it all. So what happens to the church during this time? The Bible is very clear that regardless of your view of the timing of the rapture, the church will witness a significant global decline in morality, ethics, and a desire for the truth. The resulting persecution will cause countless professing Christians to abandon their faith and walk away from Christ. In the next video, we will look at this great defection.